we're back in. Your turn.
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of a Paul Harvey here, a bit about the rest of the story that Roger didn't tell you about the running. He's absolutely correct on the lead up there. I was not a distance runner. My whole life had been anaerobic up to that point. So I thought it best to train with somebody that was really into distance like him to get ready for this bike trip, which again, our first cross-country bike trip, nobody had any idea what was going on or what was going to go on. So I started running with Roger. Actually started walking at first, I guess you could say. What he didn't tell you, though, is that by the end of our training period, which was several months, I was actually able to run 5 miles without stopping. So there was a success at one time. Not fast, mind you, but I mean, I was able to actually do that.
But I just might add, though, to kind of protect your ego, I had marked off that 5-mile distance, and quite frankly, it was a short 5 miles.
Okay, well, that just destroyed that story. But anyway, the good news is that when I went on the bike trip, that running did me unbelievably, was very good for me because I never really struggled physically on the bike trip at all, even in the mountains. I was really surprised at that, and it was certainly due to Roger's great training methods of keep running, Darrell, or you'll miss lunch. I think it was the thing. That's right. I love teaching, and I would do just teaching, and I hear if that's all I have ever had been doing. But the bike trips, as we've already mentioned, were a marvelous addition, to that experience. And in 1974, I became the men's tennis coach out here. And again, that's one of those right place, right time things, because the athletic director at the time, his name was Chuck Skarzog, had no idea what tennis was about. And the school decided to add a men's tennis team. They had a club up until then. And Chuck and several of the other faculty members knew that when I was at Butler University, I played on the tennis team there. Never really had taken any lessons as such and so on and so forth, but Chuck Skarsgård just came up to me one day and said, "Say, we're going to have a men's tennis team. How would you like to be the coach?" I said, "Well, I'm not really qualified to coach tennis. I mean, I played it." He says, "Well, none of the other people on the PE staff have ever touched a tennis racket, and you're not on the PE staff, but you've played tennis, so you're our main pick." I said, "Well, okay, as long as you guys understand, I'm going into this blind. I'll do the best I can, but yeah, you're the guy." So that's how I became tennis coach. And that first year, I think we were 2-5, and then the next year we were like 7-2. And it's been a successful program ever since. And again, a great addition to the overall experience, of working, at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. It kind of offsets some of the stuff I have to put up with regards to Roger here, but.
Did you ever think when you came 28, 30 years ago that it would be a career?
I didn't know. I really didn't. I saw this as an opportunity to get started in my profession, student services administration and higher ed, and I fully expected to, after 2, 3, whatever number of needed years to build a resume, that I would be someplace, somewhere. And I have had opportunities to do that, but my like for KVCC, and something that's been appreciated on my part, is I've had an opportunity to do a variety of things. It hasn't been just a single focus for 28 years, and so the variety of things I've had an opportunity to do has kept my interest there, my enthusiasm and so forth. And then again, like I say, the like of KVCC, it just another 5 years, and here I am soon to finish my 28th year. So no, where I am today is not even close to where I thought I would be December 28th of 1973.
I can remember some of the early years at KVCC, a lot of the decisions about course offerings, programs, and administrative decisions and so on and so forth were made very overtly with the realization that people change their minds, companies change, careers change, and so on. So let's equip people with flexibility, and choices of courses and careers and so on. And that philosophy certainly remains intact today at the school. Well, I guess I'm a prime example of that because I can remember being in with a bunch of my fraternity brothers. We were at a seminar once about careers. This is when I was still working my master's degree and teaching anatomy labs at Western. And part of the career seminar was write down where you think, the typical, write down what you think you'll be doing in 5 years and 10 years and so on and so forth. And one of the things I shared with them is I said, the last thing I'd ever want to be would be teaching anatomy. Well, here I am, 31 years later, having taught anatomy and physiology for 31 years and enjoying it very much, obviously. If you do anything that long, you're either crazy or you enjoy it. I'm probably a little of both. But so, yeah, I never intended this to be a career at all. But once I got into it, again, developments, I didn't get to change responsibilities like Roger has in his job, but you do get to change courses to teach and stuff. But I've always been in the science department, and so keep your eyes open for your future, and don't overlook any possibility, and don't make up your mind too far ahead of time. It'd be my advice, certainly based on my own personal experience.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for being on the wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
You roll it.
Yep.
Good. We have Jim Turcott, Martin Obed, Bill Lay. Start with Turk. I want you to share with us something about your pre-KVCC background, training, experience, all of that, and what brought you here?
Well, the short of it is I taught some high school for actually 3 years in Whitehall, and went to Michigan State and finished a master's degree. And when KVCC was being built, I heard from a colleague of mine there was this community college going up in Kalamazoo, and actually at that point I was thinking this is where my teaching career, where I would like to see it go. So I came to Kalamazoo and made application when the offices were over on, what was that road? White's Road, correct, and talked to several people there, and actually was offered a contract. And I had the temerity, I guess, or the naivete to turn it down. Went back to Michigan State. And I've forgotten the money involved, but it wasn't a whole lot of money. I know what it was, but I probably wouldn't put it on here. So, subsequently, I forgotten again. Oh, I think number one son came along. It was time to find a real job. So I did recontact KVCC, and interestingly enough, Dr. Lake said, once you've turned us down, we're not going to take another look at you. And Paul Milliken was the division chair in the social sciences, and he intervened in my behalf.
What is power drill? You gotta watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Anytime, sir.
Okay. Paul Milliken.
Right to Paul.
Oh, okay. My interest in KVCC was rekindled, and I reapplied, and was told actually by Dr. Lake that since I'd turned him down 2 years before that, I think it was about 2 years, maybe 3, that I needn't concern myself with reapplying, that I was not eligible to come to KVCC at that point. Well, Paul was division chair of the social science department, and he intervened on my behalf. And as it turns out, this is a little bit of hometown stuff, because Paul pulled his old high school yearbook out and found that I indeed had been in high school at the same time he was in Lincoln Park High School, and took it on himself to say, we go back that far together. This is the guy I want. And somehow he convinced Dr. Lake and whoever the dean of instruction was, and I've forgotten now, that they should take me on. And I came to KVCC, and then in the fall of 1971, and it's been a terrific ride ever since.
All right. Marty, I'd like you to share the same kind of information with us, your time before KVCC, experience, training, all of that, and then what brought you here?
Okay.
I mean, other than the girls.
Yeah, that's a true story, too. My first teaching job was at White Pigeon, in the White Pigeon Community Schools, which is just about 35 miles south of here. And I taught there for 3 years. And then I had an opportunity to go to New Mexico to get a Master of Music degree in 1 year, all paid for. So I left this area of the country and went to New Mexico and was just getting into the feel of the Southwest. It's a real different culture out there. But I did finish up my master's degree in 1970. And prior to finishing it, beginning probably in February of 1970, I started sending resumes and applications out to a number of different colleges and universities. And at that time, I thought perhaps I would be an assistant band director at a medium or small university. But along came a notice of a music position here at KVCC. And it looked interesting for a couple of reasons, including that it was back in my home area. I'm actually brought up in Coldwater, Michigan, which is about 55 miles from here. So I had a lot of friends in this area, and was very anxious to get back and with my old gang, and so I thought this would be a good place to interview if I had an opportunity, and I did. So I came out in May of 1970, it was, and interviewed, and I remember very distinctly talking with Dr. Lake. Here was a man who definitely had a mission, and I remember I talked with him for a short time, and he said, "Well, Marty, will you come with us?" And he reached out his hand, and we shook hands, and so I was quite excited about that. Funny story happened after I had said basically I'd go back and I would let him know for sure. Went back to New Mexico, signed the contract, sent it back, and then I got a call from our division chairman here at KVCC, Pete Rush, and he said, "Oh, Marty," he said, "I've got a very, very important question to ask you." He said, "We were supposed to talk with you about this in the interview, but we just forgot. We were just having a good time and forgot to ask you this." And he said, He says, would you be able to teach piano? We really needed somebody also to teach piano in addition to doing the other instrumental music." And I said, "Well," I said, "I think maybe I could teach one section of very, very beginning, this is a white key, this is a black key piano, and I don't think that you'd get into any legal hassles with that." I had studied, a few semesters of piano. So he did breathe a sigh of relief and figured that we could work it out. Of course, you know what happened after 3 years had passed. I think I had probably as many as 4 sections of beginning piano. But anyway, I came here in the fall of 1970 with quite a great influx of new people. And
Sorry, that was just a bit.
I was trying to think at what point they came on with the drills again.
Just when before. Yeah. So go ahead, right to Paul.
Oh, I'll finish that story then. Well, as you might imagine, after being here for a few years, I was not just teaching one section of beginning piano, but I think I had as many as 4. I no longer teach piano because we have some highly qualified people doing that now who actually play also. But Anyway, Pete felt relieved at the moment, and now as a department chair, I understand how that is. But I did come here in the fall of 1970, and with a great number of new people. And
Bill, we'd like to have you talk about your background and experience, training, what brought you here, all these same things.
I was in a doctoral program at the University of Arizona when money began to get tight and time seemed to be running out, and I heard of a job teaching in Glen Oaks College. It was called Glen Oaks College by Sturgis and White Pigeon, Michigan. I had never been here, and I applied for, I didn't even know what a community college was. But I applied for a position there, flew up, interviewed, was accepted, taught there for a year, made so much money, I think it was $7,000 or $8,000, made so much money that I immediately resigned and went to Europe for a year. Things over there were not quite as inexpensive as they had been here, and I ended up teaching over there for the University of Maryland overseas. I taught there for a term, and then started pining away for a girl I had met in Kalamazoo, and returned here after a semester to this area. Did not return to Glen Oaks, but I heard stories down there of this band director from White Pigeon. It turned out that my girlfriend's sisters had heartthrobs of their band director, Mr. Obed. Anyway, I needed a job. Sherry and I got married, and I applied for several positions in Michigan. And one place, Ann Arbor, Washtenaw, wrote me saying they never had any positions open. Another place, Madonna College, wrote me and asked if I was really interested in teaching Catholic girls. Oh, sure, I said. Being neither Catholic nor never having taught exclusively in a girls' college before. But I also had a call from Pete Rush, the aforementioned Peter D. Rush, and Pete invited me up for an interview. I interviewed with him, with the then Dean of Instruction, D. Lee Ross. I think D. Lee Ross lasted one more year here before he went on to greener pastures in South America. But I also had a chance to meet with Dr. Lake, and I had that same warm welcome from him, almost a missionary zeal that he had about teaching and being with students. And that inspired me very much. I too said yes, and that was in 1969. I've been here ever since.
All right, great. Jim, you came on board as a kind of jack of all trades and master of all of them.
The master part is in question, but that was part of the intent, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was part of the idea. We needed someone who could do a number of different courses and a number of different disciplines. And so you started out primarily in Soch and ended up then in Psych, and you traveled well within social science and general studies, and now you're an assistant dean for a while. And talk about all that, the adjustments that you had to make, and what kinds of
That was really
frustrations
kind
and-
of sometimes a wild ride.
I think so.
In those days, often it was questionable whether courses were going to fill or not. So the loads were always an issue. So I was, in the early years, I think the guy who was plugged in. At one point, I think I had taught every course that the department offered, including Western civilization. And I wasn't terrifically, it was sort of the piano thing, Marty. We need someone in this area. How about it? And of course, being a young faculty member at that point, I said, of course, I can do that. And as department chair, from time to time, we had in those days some real characters in our department. Paul will remember them, as you guys probably will. Ted Pritchett was there, and we had Tom Saxon and Jim Hemingway, and a group of folks who were pretty much activists. There was a time I got a dramatic introduction to our department when Pritchett took me aside and said, well, you know we control college politics, don't you? And that we simply get together each fall and decide how we're going to manage what was then called the College Congress. And Paul chaired that group for some time, and when he stepped back from that, some one of us from our department usually stepped in. It was a very enlightening exercise in political powering, I think. We always seemed to have someone on sabbatical leave. I never could understand how that worked out, whether that had anything to do with controlling the College Congress or not. There were, and still are, a number of colleagues in our department like that. They were colorful characters, so it was really a great experience. I felt for the first 5 or 6, 7 years as if you better be ready to do anything. Think in very broad terms about how you can weave these things together. Western civilization is some distance as a formal discipline from sociology, but there are ways, and we got it done, and the college grew, and our assignments changed over the years so that when Bob Ludlow left, I was able to move into a psychology assignment primarily, and been there ever since.
Great. Well, Marty, you came in after the college had been in existence a couple of years, and what was already here in humanities? I remember Ted Taves, but I don't remember much of anything else. So,
well, let me start with Ted Taves. Ted was hired the first year to begin the fall of '68. A very talented musician. He was from Canada, of German parentage, and he jumped right in. I mean, we have the newspaper clippings. He came into this community and very quickly connected with people in the symphony, the junior symphony, the old music society. He knew a lot of musicians in town, and he worked with them. And he was challenged by this idea of a new college, and how do you have musical ensembles when you really haven't rounded up people yet? So he would take a few KVCC students and have them over to his house for an open house, and then quickly put together these programs of wonderful music. Really, he did major works of music, Haydn masses, and he did original music. He was a composer. He was a pianist. In fact, I had met him in about 1969 when he came down and played with my little combo at the White Pigeon High School prom. So I actually had met him before. But anyway, getting back to your question of what was here, we also had an art program. Herb Gralnick was the art instructor. And when I think of the integrated humanities class, I think of Burl Schicker, who came from a literature and theater background. And so we had a strong humanities course there, which I took part in, at least for the music portion of it. But it was quite, that first semester and the very first seminar that we had, where he brought in a consultant. And here I was, a first year as far as college teaching. Still, I was about 26 then, with Ted Taves and Herb Gralnick, and they were very talented, very intelligent people, and they were characters too. And to try to corral them into doing these seminar exercises, and they would resist, and they would. I mean, it was just I didn't know quite which way to go, because I was certainly ready to fall in line and to follow the lead, and here I had these. Fascinating and very talented people to work with. So we had the beginnings of humanities and music and art activities there, and I think some good things were done, and good things were done with with the challenge of having a new college and, you know, not having really identified many people, and especially the performing arts.
Well, Bill, I don't think you've ever lost any of your, I'll call it youthful enthusiasm for teaching and leading, and I think it's carried over to an enthusiasm for KVCC. So, what are some of your warmest memories going back to the first decade or so?
Two things leap out immediately. I had the privilege of team teaching a class with Pat Baker and Norris Johnson. Norris has left, went on to the University of Michigan. Norris was a black poet, and Pat taught an American literature class, and I can't remember what I did, except it was, I was just in awe of these.
Another pretty face.
Yeah, these master teachers. Norris would do a section on the Harlem Renaissance, and then Pat would do something on Hawthorne, and I would do, I can't remember, something on literary symbolism, say. And we had about 50 students that I can't remember any one of them ever missing a class. And it was a round robin. The three of us went to all the classes together. We prepared at Pat's house or my house or someplace. And there was just a tremendous amount of energy and synergism. And I can remember jumping up on a table one day and declaiming something or other, and this is long before the Dead Poet Society, but I've had students tell me later, they made that movie about you. Did you see that? The other memory I had was a totally different experience, team teaching a class with David Stiles, who was a biologist here those early years. And that was a CAP course. We called it CAP. It was a capstone, I don't remember.
College approved program.
CAP, College Approved Program. And it was a month course at the end of a 14, 15-week semester, and then we would have this, or maybe it's a 12-week.
Or 3 weeks. 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd have a 3-week CAP course at the end. And I picked a bunch of readings that I loved, things like Lauren Isley and environmental readings and just general essays in science and what I considered liberal arts with a scientific bent. And then I would read it from a literary point of view, and David Stiles then would interpret this from a scientific point of view. We ended up going to Chicago to the Heath Museum, the Field Museum of Natural History, and David gave us a walking tour of fossil history. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. I can't remember asking for permission to take the students there. We just went, and afterward I think I told Pete Rush, who was a division chair or dean at the time, and he said, "Oh, Bill," he said, "great, you're doing wonderful stuff, keep on doing that, but let me know in advance."
Either that or don't tell me.
Yeah.
You forgot to fill out the field trip request form.
Yeah, exactly. Now that I'm a dean, I appreciate the field trip request in advance. So, those are exciting days, Paul.